Friends, hello friends. It is part 1 of lesson 6 in unit 7, and we're going to do a little more comparing those fractions. But today, I'm throwing a wrench at you. We've compared fractions way back in lesson 1. We compared them when the numerator was the same and the denominator was different. And we compared them when the denominator was the same but the numerator was different. Well, let's look at this 4/5 and 7/10. 4/5 is right here. 7/10 is right here. Visually, we can see which one is greater than, which one's less than. Visually, we know where it is, right? We know that we can say that 7/10 is less than 4/5. That's just using a number line to compare those fractions. And we know that if there's tenths, we can divide that into fifths. Both everything that we've been doing so far. Now, if I were to use the fraction strips to compare 3/4, 1, 2, 3, and 5/6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How would you compare those? How would you compare those two fractions? You would say that 3/4 is less than 5/6. And now this was just purely based off of fraction strips and the number line. So when we compare these six sets of fractions down here, 3 through 8, if our denominators are different and our numerators are different, we can't use that numerators are the same or the denominators are the same rule, so we need to use a model. So if I'm looking at 3/4 and 7/12, 3/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I can see that 7/12 is less than 3/4. I can use 2/5 and 3/6 by looking at my fraction tiles. So your eyes kind of have to wander to the top of your page. You can see that 2/5 is here, and that would make it smaller than 3/6. The 3/6 would be bigger. 3/5 and 7/12. Here's 3/5 up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 3/5 is less than 7/12. We can look at the top here. 4/10 and 1/5. Well, we know that one. 4/10 is greater than 1/5. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 1/5 right there. 3/5 and 6/10. That would be equal. How am I going to do that? 2/10 and 3/8. Well, I know that my fractions 1/10 is smaller than 1/8. So 3/8 must be bigger than 2/10. Now, we can't always use these models. This is just one way for my visual friends to start seeing the possibilities in comparing fractions. We're going to start comparing denominators. And you can compare two fractions with different denominators in a few different ways. You want to write equivalent fractions that use the same unit fraction. So you want to find equivalent fractions that have a common denominator. Common meaning the same. You can use different strategies to do this. The ones shown below depend on how the denominators of the two fractions are related. So like I said, there's 3 scenarios here. In case 1, you have 3/5 and 5/10. One denominator is a factor of the other. So I know that 5 and 10 are related. If I multiply 5 by 2, I can get a 10. So I'm going to use my 10 as the common denominator. So then I don't do anything to 5/10. I keep 5/10 the same, but I'm going to multiply the numerator and the denominator of the 3/5 by 2, and I'm going to get 6/10. Now I have the same denominator, and I can compare the two fractions, because 6/10 is equivalent to 3/5. So in the first scenario, one denominator, the denominators have something in common, and you can multiply or divide to get one of them so that they're the same. Now, scenario number 2, the next thing that can happen. The only number that is a factor of both denominators is 1. So 8 and 5, nothing goes into those two the same except for 1. So you want to multiply them together, and you're going to get that common denominator. So in this example, you can see here that it multiplied. What are you going to multiply to get the common denominator? So they figured out this part is what they did. They said 5/8 times what equals 40. So what times 8 equals 40? 5. And that would be 25/40. And then for 4/5, they did the same thing. 4/5 equals 40. And we had to multiply by 8. We get 32/40. So now it's a lot easier to compare 32/40 to 25/40 because you have the same size pieces. You have a common denominator. So you multiply the denominators together when the only number that is a factor is 1. Nothing else will go into those numbers. So the last scenario is there is a number besides 1 that is a factor of both denominators. So 8 and 12. What is a number that we can get to by both of those numbers? Well, 24 comes to mind. The first thing I glance at it, it's 24. So how do I get to 24 with 8? I'm going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 3 and get 15/24. And then I'm going to multiply 7 times 2 and 12 times 2 and get 15/24. Well, 15/24 is greater than 14/24, which also tells me that 5/8 is greater than 7/12. Now we're going to try some of this work down here, so don't get all stressed out. And this is just the first day of this. We're only doing a little bit today, and we're going to do a little bit tomorrow. So looking at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, we are going to use one of these scenarios to help us solve these, okay? So let's do 3/5 and 2/3. What number can we get to with both of these that they're factors of the same one? Well, 15 comes to mind, first of all. So if I have 3/5 times 3 times 3 equals 9/15, and then I do 2/3 times 5 times 5 equals 10/15. Now I'm able to compare these two because I have the same denominator. They're the same size. It's apples and apples now. You're not comparing two different things. So I can see that 9/15 is less than 10/15 because the 9 is smaller than the 10. Let's do another one. Let's do 10/12 10/12 and 5/6. Well, I know I can get this 6 to be a 12, right? Times 2 times 2 equals 10/12. Huh! Look at that. Now I can compare 10/12. I'm not going to do anything to this one because I'm trying to get my denominators the same. Look at that. So what can I say about these two fractions? 10/12 and 5/6 are equivalent. Okay, let's look at 3/4 and 8/10. What could we do? Well, what if we were to get to 20? How could we get to 20 with these? Times 5 and 8/10 times 2 times 2. So we have 20/15 and we have 16/20. So 3/4 is less than 8/10. The more we have to practice this more and more and more. It's going to become easier as you do it, the more you do it. And we're going to do a lot of practicing in workshop tomorrow before we move on. 4/5 and 75/100. Oh me, oh my. How am I going to get to these to be the same? Well, let's keep 100. And I'm going to multiply this by 20. And I will get 80/100, which tells me that 4/5 is greater than 75/100. Okay, 5/8 and 3/5. Well, that's this scenario right here. 8 and 5. There's nothing that goes into those, or they don't relate to each other very well. So we're just going to use the opposite one to get our equivalent fractions. 25/40 and 24/40. So 5/8 is greater than 3/5. Because now I'm looking at the ones with the common denominator, and all I have to do is look at the top ones to see which one's bigger and which one's smaller. 2/3 and 7/10. Again, ones that don't really relate that great to each other. So we're just going to use the other denominator to get some equivalent fractions. 20/30, 21/30. So 7/10 is greater than 2/3. Now, if you didn't get this offhand, it's okay. We are going to do lots and lots of practice on this over the next few days. We have 2 days on this lesson. I did all of these with you today because we're going to do some more practice with it in workshop tomorrow. Don't forget to do your Google form, and I will see you in class tomorrow.